And then I'll come to Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Chair. And can I go back to Guio, please, if the Vice Marshal will come up again? Thank you, Air Marshal. Could you step through the numbers and types of rockets and missiles that Guio is acquiring, and/or then separately what you are planning on manufacturing?
Air Marshal Leon Phillips, Chief of Guided Weapons and EO. Sorry, I just want to catch the question again. The number of types of weapons we are buying and manufacturing?
Yes, please.
Yes, certainly. All right. So government's already made a number of announcements around increasing the lethality of the ADF. Chief of Navy mentioned a few examples of increasing the reach of our naval forces through Tomahawk missiles, NSMs, and then potentially SM2 and SM6 later on. We're also increasing the lethality of Army through the acquisition of HIMARS, a range of weapons, including our foray into PRISM. And for Air Force, we continue to acquire LRASM, JASSM-ER and a range of other weapons in terms of our acquisition. In terms of domestic manufacture, we already, as I've mentioned previously, are blessed with our facility at Mulwala and Benalla, so we produce some energetics there. We do not produce a guided weapon in this country yet. I've been tasked to come up with options and return to government in Q2 of this year. We're finalising those options. What we decide to do will be a matter for government, Senator.
Sure. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. Other than the HIMARS and the range of missiles that it will use, you talk about energetics, assume that they're going into 155 shells that you're going to use. What other tube artillery is particularly land-based, I'm focusing on here, what land-based strike are we going to use to be able to deliver the sustained fire that, that we would need in any land battle, as we've seen in Ukraine?
So, Senator, I think our circumstances might be slightly different to Ukraine. Again, I've said we've continued... Sorry?
I hope so.
Well, at least its geography is quite different. But certainly, as we announced last year, we are looking to work with the US government to explore co-production of GMLRS. We also said we are looking to do more in terms of 155 shells. We do small arms calibre, and there'll be a range of weapons in the future that we may acquire off the shelf, or we may look to do to consider domestic manufacturing on.
So in terms of that domestic manufacturing, are the contracts that you have with Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, do they exclude any other companies to manufacture for the ADF?
So any contracts that we do have with those companies aren't exclusive. In other words, that they don't exclude the government deciding to explore other weapons with other manufacturers that it may wish to pursue. I guess the government will look to balance where it invests its effort into domestic manufacturing. Some of the considerations, Senator, and I've said that before, is that we are looking to put qualified weapons in the hands of the ADF, hence our interest in exploring co-production of GMLRS. As a qualified weapon that's qualified to launch out of HIMARS, it's integrated in our AFIDAD's targeting system, and furthermore might be something that we could interchange with the US Army, noting they have forces that rotate through this region as well. So again, interoperability is one of a number of factors that we would consider as we work out what makes sense to domestically manufacture in this country. On
that, HIMARS is in high demand around the world From what I can find out, there's a 5-year waiting list for HIMARS systems, and US production of GMLRS is only, I believe, 30 a month. How are we going to get to a run rate on your crawl, walk, run if even the nation that we're buying off can only produce or has limited production?
So you make a valid point, Senator, that obviously our views around producing in this country, we are looking to complement, not compete with existing manufacturing bases. So it would make sense to create second sources of supply, particularly second sources of supply around some of the critical subcomponents that may be in demand. So again, part of our crawl, walk, run approach will be to put in place the necessary contractual and government intergovernment arrangements that we may need, and then obviously look to qualify and bring up Australian subcomponents into that supply chain. So that would be our first step. The government's DIDS strategy and SDIP number 4 on GWEO alluded to that capability. I expect the government will have an enterprise plan that will have a bit more detail on that. Minister Conroy's made some comments about that this week, and I guess that will be up to the government to consider how it wants to make those announcements.
Thank you, Air Marshal. There's some media going around today about an Australian defence company called Defentex that have acquired Brazil's largest defence company, Avibras, and they are a manufacturer of rockets and missiles. Is the government looking to support a local Indigenous manufacturer, acquire and supply to export markets, even if the ADF won't buy it? What support can companies like that lean into?
I might just let my colleague answer the question around how we support exports, Senator.
Thank you.
And perhaps what I can indicate to you, Senator, is I know this is an area of real interest for you. I am going to just offer this caution that officials can provide you with general information about the approach. Your question actually goes to a very specific set of circumstances, and I think it would be better if you didn't ask officials to speak about the specifics of any pending applications that might be...
Absolutely agree with you, Minister, and if it didn't come across clearly, I did ask what can companies like this look to for support. I'm not asking about this particular company.
Okay.
Senator, I'll
yes.
throw to David Nockels, First Assistant Secretary, Defence Industry, who will talk about the process around export finance in Australia and how it can support Australian industry. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr Jeffrey. So, Senator, I might talk firstly at a broad level in terms of support for domestic industry in terms of exports, and then might move specifically to how that might be supported in a finance sense. So, obviously the DIDS has a chapter on how government will support defence industry in the export space, but there are a whole range of programs and lines of activity that the government has in place related to that. So firstly, we have an organisation or a team called Team Defence Australia. So we will take companies overseas to a range of trade fairs around the globe. So that team does excellent work and is closely linked to Austrade. So Defence provides through a memorandum of understanding about $2.5 million a year. So Austrade can focus its efforts purely on defence sector in a number of geographies around the world. So we support defence industry through the TDA, or Team Defence Australia team, and Austrade. When the team travels with defence industry, we have a number of senior ranked ADF officials who will accompany and will be able to work with industry and open doors, etc. Also with DIDS, the government put aside in the budget about $168 million, I think, from a grants perspective to support defence industry. Some of that money is specifically focused around supporting companies that are looking to export as well. When it comes to financing specific opportunities. So obviously the Export Finance Australia organisation under the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade portfolio has carriage of that. When it comes to defence opportunities, Export Finance Australia will assess a business case that might be put to them.
Yes.
And in doing so, they'll look at it from their commercial account perspective in the first instance. If they feel that they can't find a strong case for putting it under the commercial account, they'll then turn to Defence, Foreign Affairs and other agencies to see whether it might sit under the national interest account, and in particular drawing down on the Defence Export Facility that sits under that account. Defence and potentially other agencies would then provide advice back to EFA as to whether or not that business case meets some criteria. That criteria covers a range of things that include, what is the benefit to Australia's industrial base, economic base, our strategic and foreign policy interests. So those criteria we would use to judge a case, and then that is provided back to EFA. They in turn would then take it to the Minister, Trade and Tourism, who in turn, if feeling that the recommendation was strong enough, would then take it through to Cabinet. There would then be a government decision, obviously, and then EFA would engage directly with that company and terms and conditions would be sorted out. So that's the high-level process around how we, government, would support companies in a finance sense.
Thank you, Mr Nockels. That's really helpful. Just want to...
Last minute.
Thank you. Just want to make clear that it's not just the national interest just isn't what the ADF would use or buy from a company. It also includes the commercial and export interests that go to Australia's prosperity and growing that prosperity.
Absolutely, Senator, because it would draw potentially that financing arrangement would draw down on the Defence Export Facility, export focus, clearly.
Great, thank you.